All right, welcome everybody back to another episode of the Big Doug and Carmi Show. You one-stop shop for all things Commanders. We are still grinding it all the way through the draft cycle on our way to the draft. Just one day and a week away at this point. We'll fire up the mock draft machine again today. And our guest GM is Daniel Harms. Daniel, thanks for joining us today.
Appreciate you guys having me on. I'm looking forward to this one. I don't get to focus in on the Commanders all that much from watching it, so this is going to be a lot of fun to go through.
And it's kind of why we like doing this, because if you get the same folks on all the time, you're going to get the same answers all the time. We've really been fortunate, I think, George, to have some great guests on and get some names that I don't think either one of us had on our radar at the time, which is one of the beautiful things about doing this. Daniel, your first time on the podcast, we like to get to know folk a little bit. Tell us how you got started with the Draft Network and also RGR Football, correct? You work with them?
Yes, I work over at rgrfootball.com. It's a YouTube page where I cover the Chiefs every day, whenever we get the chance to do that. So I've been blessed to be able to do that for 6-7 years now. Jeez, time absolutely flies. And as it goes for the Draft Network, I've worked with a lot of draft stuff with RGR. We also produce our own draft guide every year. So that was where I started doing draft content. And, you find once you start doing prospects, you're like, well, I really love to do this. And you look forward to doing it every single year. And I was approached by them last year, and I was at the time working for Football Guys in the fantasy world, fantasy space. And then I decided it was time to dip my feet into more of the actual draft content pool. So I've been there since June of last year, just doing tons of different prospect profiles, video breakdowns. That's really one of the things that pulled me towards the Draft Network, because they wanted me to basically be the face of the YouTube page. So I've got every single week over the last, I don't know, since June, I've had a film breakdown go up on there every day, every Monday or Tuesday. So it's been a lot of fun to focus on the draft more than I ever have in my life and see more prospects than I ever have. And it gives you a real appreciation for what some of the big names in the draft community have done for maybe a decade plus, and getting to 200, 300 players. So it's been a grind, as you guys mentioned, to get into the draft season, but it's been a lot of fun.
I was going to say, when the fantasy guys come on, we ask them how many leagues they're in. For the draft guys, we're always curious, how many guys have you gotten through in this cycle?
Oh, I can actually answer both questions. So last year I was in 15 fantasy leagues myself, and I think I have watched 150 prospects myself this year.
Dan, is there a particular position that you particularly like more than the other? It's like a scout more than the other.
I think wide receiver is my favorite to scout, and also my most knowledgeable. I feel like I do a really great job of dissecting what receivers do from the line of scrimmage work to top of route through the stem, after the catch point, everything like that. So there's a lot of nuance that goes into it. And that's one of the positions that, or at least over the last maybe 3 or 4 years, that I've really honed in on. And I think I've developed a really good feel for.
Gotcha. And quick follow-up to that, people tend to say that this wide receiver class maybe isn't so deep. Do you agree with that? I know that, Emeka Egbuka up top, Ted McClellan up top as well. How deep do you think this wide receiver class in regard to like impact players? Does it go to the second or third round, or what's your perspective?
I think day 2 is going to be full of a lot of really good wide receiver 2s and 3s. Like there's going to be a ton of, and that's not just at the wide receiver position. I think that this draft is going to be great for just starters, NFL starters for a long time, and just a lot of different varying body types, more so some bigger bodies that we haven't seen in later drafts or recent drafts. I think this one has got a lot of guys. Specifically, you talked about McMillan, but also Jaden Higgins. There's also some guys later on day 3 that will be big body guys that have some developmental traits to them as well.
George, let's go ahead and fire this thing up and get started. It is our first time using the Draft Network simulator, so you'll bear with us as we kind of work our way through this for the first time. We played around with it just a little bit before we got here, Daniel, and it looks really slick. The format is a little different than any of the other ones out there right now, so I'm excited to kind of give this thing a try here. While he's doing this, Daniel, are there a couple of guys that you thought you'd be higher on that maybe a little lower on, and vice versa?
I mean, most recently, I've gone through some cross checks. Actually, I'll pull up some of my cross checks right here so I can see that, because I've walked through. Everyone's talking about first round grades for Derek Harmon. I'm not quite there yet. Defense tackle out of Oregon. I feel like some of what he does obviously he's a very good run defender. I think that translates pretty seamlessly from what he does now, from what he did at Michigan State to Oregon, now to the NFL. I think those translatable qualities with taking on double teams, stacking, peeking, and shedding, and finding the football. I think he does all of that pretty well. I was just a little underwhelmed as a pass rusher, and then getting into gaps in the backfield, like everyone's really pointed out to. I think I'm a little bit lower on him than a couple of guys like his teammate Josh Connolly. Like, he's been knocked in the first round a lot as well. I'm a little bit lower there. James Pierce Jr., Tennessee edge rusher, also kind of being mocked in the first round. Maybe not so much lately, but I'm a little bit lower on him as well. And I've been like the leader in the clubhouse, at least in my mind, for Jalen Royals, Utah State wide receiver. He's one of my favorite players to watch. And Kyle Williams out of Washington State is another wide receiver that I really love as well. I've had a third round grade on him for a little while. So there's just so many different players. I think that there's going to be a lot of varying opinions on prospects, and that's okay for this class specifically, because there are so many, I guess, like I said, starting prospect players. Like, you're not going to get a ton of like blue chip guys, but this is really where GMs and scouting departments are going to make their money, finding those starters and getting the most out of them.
Daniel, I think Washington's definitely in the market for an edge rusher. James Pierce, from what I understand, I guess my question to you is, I see him falling out maybe potentially late first round, potential second round, where earlier in the draft cycle, he was maybe a top 15 pick. Obviously, he's got that pure speed. Some people kind of pegging him as a one-trick pony potentially. Some people are saying there might be character concerns. I'm kind of curious what your take is on him.
So I haven't heard anything in terms of like off-field big distraction stuff. I've seen more about work ethic. Yep. And that does translate a little bit to his tape, where if the players run away from him, every now and then you'll get him chased down a backside run play. I mean, if you're unblocked, I expect you to run after the play, and you get rewarded for that sometimes. But oftentimes I find myself very underwhelmed from a run defense and a pass rush perspective. If he's not winning off the edge with his speed and then that ability to bend, I don't see the advanced hand usage to counter through, to continue to work the pass rush rep. And that's where, for me, I value that a lot more in prospects. If you're going to continue to work through a pass rush rep against a tackle, wherever you are, I'm going to value that a little bit higher. So there's some players that I don't necessarily see that with. I mentioned Derek Harmon earlier. I see the same thing with James Pierce, where you have some of the tools to work with. Obviously, he's a very athletic guy. I think he has speed to power. It's just not a consistent part of his game where you want to see him set up pass rush moves. Like, if you're consistently winning off the edge, set that up for an inside counter, right? You can make that tackle think you're going to win the arc, open up that B gap, use a little bit of a cross chop back inside of the B gap, something like that, just to continue to set up those sequencing of your pass rush moves. I didn't necessarily see that with him.
Makes sense. All right, let's get going. So we'll get we'll start the board back up again. Top 5 picks kind of went chalk: Cam Ward, Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, Will Campbell. Those are the standard 4 picks that we're constantly seeing over and over again. Let's resume the draft.
Just real question for you guys. How do you feel about Washington's pick right now? Like, do you think that they should be trading out of the first round, or trying to acquire some more draft capital here because of having 5 picks and only 2 on the first 2 days? I don't know how that's going to translate to the specifics of what Washington's trying to do right now.
Doug, you want to jump at it first?
I mean, I think they'd probably like to. Certainly the fan base, I think, is enamored with being able to trade back. It feels like this is going to be a rough year to get that trade back. Yeah. To your point, you talked about how many just good starters there are in the middle there, and this first round 2 and 3, and we just don't have them. At the same time, the team has kind of set themselves up where I don't want to move back to say 35 and miss a guy that really could have been explosive and helped the team this year, because they need people that can help the team now. You know what I mean? So I think there is a way. We've talked about this on the show a bunch. I think if you can get to 33, 35, you're still going to have the same grouping of talent that you might have gotten at 29, and you might not be so upset about missing. I think really, and this, it's how the board falls.
Absolutely.
If a guy like Izaraku is there and you think he's and if he's, 1 or 2 on your board there of what's left of the ends, we've seen those ends start moving quickly off the board by the time you get to 61. So It's a dangerous game to play, when you're trading back. I think if you could pick up a third and move back 5 or 6 places, that'd be fine.
Yeah, I'm right there with Doug as well. I feel like it depends if they're screaming value at 29. And right now, we're looking at the board. I see Jahdae Barron on there, Malachi Starks. That's a very, very intriguing, right? Those are plug and play players you can put on your team right now and start them. So that might be kind of intriguing to put them on the team. But I think in an idle situation, sitting there at 5 with 5 picks, it is concerning, right? I feel like, that second round selection, as we're going to see in a moment, there's so much good talent there, right? Trevion Henderson might fall there. Trey Harris might fall there. There's some good, second tier wide receiver edge players that are in that second round that I'd love to add a pick there. Dream scenario, Cleveland wants to move up, get Jackson Dart. We move back to 33, get another selection there. But as Doug kind of alluded to, we'll see. I think the Giants and the Browns, they kind of, the Giants have Jameis Winston now and Russell Wilson. They don't necessarily need to fight for a quarterback anymore. And Cleveland Browns, they had Joe Flacco, they have Kenny Pickett and Deshaun Watson. Do they really need to trade up for a quarterback as well? I think the positions are kind of going away right now. So we'll see. So speaking of which, you're our GM now, Daniel. You're on the board.
Yeah.
We're looking at 29. There is some talent there. And I'm not sure if you're super familiar with our I don't know if you want me to lead the witness at all, but I'll let a team lead so you can see it. I'd say edge, wide receiver, cornerback, running back are our big 4, and Draft Network nailed it right there. So just keep that in mind with your selections.
Yeah, this one, it's interesting. It depends on a little bit more of what you're looking for, right? I think speed to power is becoming a really big thing for the defensive ends in not just in the NFL, but trying to get the most out of them. So when you watch Donovan Ezraku out of Boston College, you want a little bit more of that. I see flashes at times from him to go speed to power. He has the length, but I don't think he always knows how to use it. So again, we're at the end of the first round. So the first round grades in terms of where you see that, I would only have 1 in the guys that I see, or maybe 2, if you consider Malachi Stark's positional value as a first round pick, which again, player based, I think he's a first rounder, but positional value, maybe you don't. Jahdae Barron is the other guy that just stands out. I think he player all day long, and I would take him. But then you have to consider you have now 2 smaller defensive backs. Granted, they don't play that way. I don't think Mike Sanger still plays small by any stretch of the imagination. You have a lot of versatility there too. I'm picturing what Dan Quinn likes to do. He does like to get creative a little bit, right? He wants to send some guys from different places, and I think that if you envision Jahdae Barron with Mike Sainers still, you can see a little bit of, well, who's blitzing, right? Who's coming this time? And that would be a lot of fun also because you have the football IQ from a guy like Jahdae Barron. I think he fits into exactly what you want from that type of player who can play on the outside, but he also can play safety and in the nickel spot. So whether or not you feel like Noah Igbenogany is going to be a future player there at nickel for them, I don't necessarily think that's
I agree with that.
Want.
Yeah, placeholder for a year. Yeah.
So, oh man, I think for me, it's between Donovan Ezraku and Jahdae Barron in this situation. How do you guys feel about that?
I'm curious. I think you're probably right. As George will tell you, I have a personal Georgia bias, so I would lean Malachi Starks here, but that's just homerism speaking. Does the 40 time for Thomas bother you?
Not really.
Okay.
Again, when we're talking about DBs specifically, Ezra Thomas wins with his physicality and able to kind of throw off timing. So if you're going to play him on the outside and he's playing off coverage, I'm less worried about the deep field speed. And you're playing him press, I'm less worried about it because he does well timing his hands, right? He's long, and then he does a pretty nice job for a guy his size to be able to time that jab and then move his hips, right? And keep himself in front and in that hip pocket. So there's a little bit less of a worry for me in that regard. I just think at the top of routes is where you see a little bit of the problems with Thomas. Is he's going to be a very good vertical player and keep guys in front of him, but when it comes to the break points, you see maybe the hips don't always sink and he doesn't always have that innate ability to see where the receiver's going. He gets manipulated a little bit at the top of the route. So the physical nature, great. I love the tools that he possesses, but at this point, I mean, he would be the Marshawn Lattimore replacement eventually, right? Like that's kind of how you feel about that. So I don't necessarily hate
put
it.
him outside and you get Mikey back inside the nickel.
For sure. And honestly, I was really impressed with what Mike did last year at outside. I don't know if anyone really expected that to happen either. So if you feel comfortable with him on the outside, I think ideally you'd like to have him in a Trent McDuffie situation where maybe he plays on the outside, but in nickel, he goes in the nickel where he's going to be at his best. So that, again, that's why you're kind of weighing, is Jahdae Barron maybe the best fit? He's definitely the best player, but is he the best fit because you have two smaller guys? You can get creative with that, or you can go the Azariah Thomas route where he's a guy on the outside and you can really bring Mike Sainristil back inside.
I agree with you, Daniel. I think Jahdae Barron is, a top 15 talent. He can play slot. He can play safety. He can play boundary corner. He can do everything. I think he's a very overall talented cornerback. So I think he'd probably be the best player on the board. And if we're trying to build, needs change every year, right? So if you get Jahdae Barron, I don't think he'd be upset with that over the next 4 years. My question to you is, I've been kind of going through this as like a thought cycle over the past couple of days. If we don't select an edge here, do you think we can still get one at 61? Are they going to be long gone by the time we get to round 2?
That's the thing here. If you wouldn't mind, just pull up the edges that are clicked into the edge, just so we can see who's going to maybe relatively be around. Because stylistically wise, we're looking at some guys like Princely Umanmielen out of Ole Miss in that type of range, right? That's an athletic upside type of player. He's not a finished product. I don't think anybody coming out of Ole Miss is a finished product at this point, outside of maybe Trey Amos. But he's going to have some of that upside as well. But I feel like a guy like Femi Oladajo out of UCLA also is that fit for what Washington might be looking for, the endless motor. He's got the tools, former linebacker, athletic kind of guy. So there's probably going to be some stylistic fits, I think, in the second round. You just have to kind of weigh, right? You don't really know what's going to happen. So I think in this scenario, again, it would probably be best defensive player available, and I would lean Jahdae Barron.
I like it. A little fun fact, I'm sure you guys probably know, but Ken Norton Jr. was the linebacker coach at UCLA and actually coached Femi Oladajo as well. So there is a connection there. And I think he's screaming commander player, type of player they want over there as well. So I like it. You're a first person that's going to select Jahdae Barron on our draft board. So it's kind of cool. It's kind of fun. So let's give it a whirl. See what happens.
Oh, man.
Luther Burden was a top 15 pick a year and a half ago, it feels like. Massive fall, just a bad fit last year on what they were asking him to do, or you have concerns about him at the next level?
Yeah, I actually did a film breakdown of him coming into the year. So in the last summer, I did one, and when you watched his tape, there's some question marks about his total route running. I didn't feel like he ran with a ton of tempo and lazy routes. Top of his routes, he would round off, and effort. I'll be honest, I still have concerns about that. 2 years in a row, I watched him and I have concerns about the effort he puts into, even if you're not being utilized the right way. And I can say with 100% certainty that they did not utilize him the right way at Missouri last year. It's not good in terms of, you want him to play everywhere. And we had people saying that coming into 2024, Luther Burden was going to be asked to play more on the outside. That did not happen. No. None of that happened. They made him into this slot. We're going to move you around around the field, give you the football in the flat, or throw it to you down the field. Like, that doesn't help develop a player. Tons and tons of raw ability. He's maybe the most natural football player in terms of with the ball in his hands in this draft. Like, I don't think that's out of the question. But from a wide receiver perspective, I don't think his route tree obviously is very advanced. That's not all his fault, but also the routes that he's asked to run, he doesn't run them with a sense of urgency. He really doesn't tempo his routes. And I think at the top, he just gets lazy. And that was always something I was questioning coming into the season. And unfortunately, he was unable to answer those questions through some no fault of his own and his own as well.
Has he ever done it with Deebo Samuel? I think they're a pretty similar player from what I understand.
A little bit. I think that naturally you see both of those guys value with the ball in their hands. Like they didn't necessarily develop as true route runners. I think that Deebo runs the dig route among the best receivers in football. I think that he does a really nice job of those deep dig routes over the middle of the field. So if you have him running some of that, but you also see a little bit of that with Luther Burden, I would like to see, again, a bit more finish and polish through his routes that I don't necessarily see. And the same to an extent from Deebo Samuel. Like, he wasn't necessarily asked to run a ton of different routes, and he didn't develop as a true route runner in the NFL either. So sometimes you have to project a little bit. Also, you have to understand that work ethic off the field to get better at that is something that we don't always have the answer to either.
George, I gotta say the way that the graphic is set up here, like
real
the best
cool.
ball is really slick and well done.
Real slick.
Also, the second round just got hammered. I'm looking at it, he flew off the
Yeah.
board,
Yeah.
and it just took a beating.
Hey, Daniel, can you talk to us about Trey Harris? He's someone that I'm intrigued by. I think he's visiting the Commanders today. I feel like he's a big body wide receiver that I'm interested. I want to hear your thoughts on him.
Yeah, it does feel like big body receiver outside guy is going to be on the docket, right, for the Commanders. It's somebody that, even though I think that Terry McLaurin is such a versatile player who can do all of it, you don't always just want to stick him at X, right, and say go be that big player. Trey Harris is a little bit more of a refined line of scrimmage player than I expected to find. He's got pretty good footwork. I think he does a really nice job of manipulating DBs in that first 5 yards with his feet, with his intention. He's not the most explosive guy in the world. He's not the fastest guy in the world. He's also not going to do a ton after the catch in the NFL. I think he does a nice job of setting himself up to get the most out of a curl. Again, you have to remember that Ole Miss does not run a ton of routes. Like, they're not asked to do a ton at Ole Miss. You see a lot of curls, you see a lot of goes down the field, but with the times where he's asked to run either like a comeback or an out route, you can see how he's intentionally setting up a DB to open up that out. If you have like maybe this far between where you're standing and the sideline, he'll take his route and intentionally, give himself some space. So we release inside, and then at the top of the route, a little bit of slow hesitation, and then get to the out and creating some space there. So a better route runner than I expected. I do think he's going to be limited from a catch point perspective. He has flashes every now and then, but he also just drops the ball for no reason at times, which is frustrating on tape for a guy when you have someone in the end zone draped all over you and you come up with a touchdown, or then you're wide open over the middle of the field for maybe a long touchdown and you just drop it. That's always a frustrating aspect of
it. Absolutely.
Very good route runner. And I think he's going to be a very good short to intermediate kind of possession receiver in the next level. You'll find every now and then he'll win downfield, but it's more build up speed. It's not a explosive first step and everything like that. He wins far more with timing and intention in the short to intermediate parts of the field.
Is there a comp you have for him by any chance? No pressure.
I'll be honest. Comps are not my thing. I like to
perfect.
watch players and see what they do well.
Cool. No worries. All right, so we're back on the board again. Doug, sorry, go ahead, Doug.
No, I was just saying, I was curious who's here, who's available here. If you can see him, I can't see him on my screen.
Yeah, so we're looking at 29. I don't know if you see any big shocks to you on the board, as Doug kind of alluded to. They got hammered. James Spears came off the board. Burden came off the board. Femi came off the board. Osborne Thomas, Trey Harris, Maxwell Harrison. So we're looking at the big board now, and here we are. We have Elijah Arroyo, best on the board, Darius Alexander, Benjamin Morris, Jeffrey Bassa. Yeah, that's a pretty strong second round. We're starting to see some changes here. So, whatever you think.
Good talent on the board, though.
Get some talent. Yeah, I agree.
That was a tough. That was a tough spot to see happen. Exactly what we talked about. How if it goes defensive end, you have to hope that doesn't happen. And unfortunately, that's exactly what did. And you don't have a lot of defensive end options here. And looking at the corners, we took Jada Barron in the first round, and now you're seeing Siobhan Rebel here. You're seeing Benjamin Morrison, who I'm a pretty big fan of. Like, there's some options here that you could have. Trey Amos is on the board. Weird things fall. Yeah. But I will say Caleb Johnson being on the board is very intriguing. I don't know that he lasts this long in on next week. Who knows what's going to happen there? But you guys tell me. I'm not as versed in what the running scheme is for the offense at Washington. Do they run more zone, outside zone? Is that predominantly what they want to do?
From what I gather, they're more of a power duo type of run game. They want to get up the field more vertical, but that's a result of having Brian Robinson as our current running back. Right? Sure. I'm curious if they would expand it if we have more of a versatile running back. So that's what I understand.
It was similar in Phoenix too with James Conner there. Not necessarily like a speedy back, but gets to the hole and quickly. Caleb Johnson's in for a 30 visit today in Washington. So I mean,
it's funny. People are kind of. Yeah, people are kind of burying him. I don't know if you agree with that, Daniel, but like he was visiting Washington, and most of Washington Twitter is like, "Oh no, another Brian Robinson." I'm very disappointed by that. Is that a miscalculation on their part, or what are your thoughts?
I understand it to an extent. I think they play different styles of football from what they're best at. They both have the same kind of running style. I think Brian Robinson was a better footwork player coming out than anyone expected him to be, and you can see that. But Caleb Johnson has the most efficient feet in this class, bar none. I don't think it's very close either. He does a fantastic job of getting where he needs to go in the least amount of time. He patient, but it never looks that way. He gets to his spot. He can make guys miss. I think we see everyone point to his 40-yard dash. I don't care. I don't care about the 40-yard dash.
Yeah.
He's a burst paced guy, and he wins with footwork, vision, and burst. Once you get into the second level, third levels, today's NFL, you see a lot of too high defenses. Most of the time, unless you're the Philadelphia Eagles, you're going to have a lot of defenders in space, especially a team that will throw the football around with Jaden Daniels. It's already going to be spaced out. So you're not going to hit a ton of home runs anyway, unless Jaden is the one doing it. So pairing him with a guy like Caleb Johnson, who is efficient, has great footwork. And again, the schemes will change. I think Duo is right now really big right now. Like their teams are just kind of wanting to play that power football, get up to the second level as fast as possible because of the space created with defenses. You have, like I said, you got two high safeties, you got linebackers off a little bit. So getting outside is a lot harder to do. Those speed guys can get down there quicker.
Absolutely.
So getting upfield as quickly as possible is kind of in right now in the NFL, and we'll see how that changes over time. But I don't think that Caleb Johnson is a bad like gap scheme fit. I think that he's just a better outside zone runner and just a really efficient player. I also think he's I'll say he's fine in terms of pass protection. He still has some technique stuff to work on, but he's an underrated pass catcher out of the backfield as well.
Got it.
I think if you ask the fan base, they're more interested in a guy like Sampson from Tennessee that's got some real juice. The fan base is desperate for some juice on offense and edge, and frankly, I'm with them. That's the one thing the team doesn't have a ton of.
That's fair.
Is just like soup that juice that you need in today's game.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, so for sure. So it's up to you though. You're the GM. You're picking the best player on the board. I'm going to show you. So we looked at running backs: Caleb Johnson, Dylan Sampson, Ollie Gordon, Devin Neal. So there is some depth at the running back position if you want to go. We're looking at wide receiver: Jaden Higgins, Kyle Williams, Savion Williams. Jaden Higgins is probably one of the better ones that's remaining. So we got to keep that in mind. I don't know if you think differently. You're the wide receiver guy. Edge rushers: Jared Ivey, Jack Sawyer, JTT, Josiah Stewart, Shamar Turner. Let's take a look at maybe linebacker potentially. I don't really see anyone that pops out to me. No, we already addressed corner, but you can take a look at that as well. Maybe safety. There's some good corners available.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like I was when you go through the draft, like maybe I would have gone and taken a defensive end in the first round had that been the case. But again, you never really know what's going to happen. I think JTT is a really good spot here in terms of a high football IQ guy. He's got more athletic upside than I think he gets credit for. This happens a lot, I think, with OSU guys and some of these big name schools where they get the big prospects, but they don't necessarily always develop into what they could be. You see this with Princely Umanmielen. You see it with Michael Williams, any Georgia defensive end, any of them. They just grab guys and throw them out there. Shamar Stewart and Nick Scorton, like all of them have these upsides that don't get reached in college football. But for JTT, I think that he's going to be a very good run defender early on. He reads blocks very well, and with his length, he can keep guys off of him, shed, and be able to set that edge. Really, what you want to do from an outside defensive end perspective. But I will say he's not going to win with speed off the edge. So if you're looking for a guy that has juice off the edge, it's not in the frame here. I also think that he just didn't have a ton of sack production based off of that, right? Being able to threaten the edge. He had to go through guys and really use his hands where you didn't see a ton of that technique either. But again, there's development upside there from a pass rush perspective, who's already going to come in and be a really high level run defender in my mind. So I think in my mind here, in terms of positional value, it's between JTT and Caleb Johnson. I don't know what you guys thoughts on that.
The other thing I'll ask you real quickly is it's not necessarily a need for Washington, but at some point, where do you start taking that value? Like I see Darius Alexander and I see Omar Narman Lot, and although defensive tackle isn't necessarily high up on the board, like those two guys to me, I think are difference makers right away. And again, you talk about juice, the kid from Tennessee got it in buckets So I'm just curious your thoughts on those guys and kind of how you stack up what you need versus the value of what you're going to get.
Yeah, that's always a fun part, right? And plus, even for Washington, it's not like they have a surefire plan for the future in terms of Javon Kinlaw's not. We don't know what Javon Kinlaw really is.
Yeah.
And Deron Payne, he was 2018 was when he was drafted, so you
He's
never know.
gone after this year. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you have that as well. I know Jerzon Newton is there, and I think he showed some flashes last year, and you're hoping he can continue to develop. But the plan for the future has always got to be in the back of the mind. So again, if you're in the war room and you see Darius Alexander is your number one guy on the board, and he's still there, and then you have to figure some of that out. I mean, I love Darius Alexander. I think he's a fantastic. I know he's a bit older. I don't care about the age right now, to be honest with you, for him because of what he brings as a type of elite mover that he is. I also think he's really stout at the point of attack. And even though he needs to work on his conditioning a little bit, he has that quick twitch footwork to get into gaps, to get in the backfield, but also to use his hands well. I think that he's one of the guys that wants to really finish in terms of throwing guys to the ground, but he's just does not have the conditioning right now. You can see it when he's chasing down a play. He's like, yeah, that's too far away. I don't want to go do that. So there is a little bit of a concern there with the age factor as well. But in terms of pure players, I love what he brings from that athletic and physical standpoint.
Well, the pick is yours. What you tell us?
I'm worried about defensive end later. I'll be honest. I'll be honest. It's a tough spot to see what 7 of them go in the second round before they.
It was brutal.
Oh, that's awful. But there are some players that I like in terms of I like Savion Jones a lot. He can move around the defensive line. I like Shamar Turner as a pass rush kind of guy. I like Josh Joyner as a 4th round, 5th round guy, but that's later. But I think for me, I would pick JTT in this spot. I think you're going to have some running backs later that will fit as well, some juice guys as well. So I would probably pick JTT in this spot.
All right, I'm gonna do that real quick, but just to throw it out there, Jaden Higgins is sitting there as well. Is he someone that's a class above the other wide receivers, or do you think he's kind of in that 3rd round mix? Does he fall along with Kyle Williams, Savion Williams, Shaq Beck, or is he clearly above everyone else?
So I actually am a little bit lower on Higgins and the rest of consensus. I would have him in the 3rd round myself. I'm a little worried about his explosiveness, and then he doesn't really separate well, and he lets contact bother him far too much. Not just at the catch point, but through the route. I think that's become a problem for him too, and that's going to be a bigger issue in the NFL.
Got it. All right, perfect. Let's take JTT. Let's get it going. All right, let's look at the board.
What do you like about JTT better than you do Sawyer?
So I don't think there's any upside for Jack Sawyer. I think Jack Sawyer is who he is and who he's going to be the rest of his career, which is a fine run defender. He's a really smart player. I see more athletic upside with JTT, not like a ton more, but I think that if you work, and he works on the first step, as long as he can start to actually threaten the arc, I think he has more get off than a guy like Jack Sawyer does. It's not necessarily about winning the edge. It's about making the tackle think you can. And I think that he can at least offer that a little bit more than Jack Sawyer does. And I think from a run defense perspective, they're both very good players. JTT, they both get their hands up, right? They see the ball very well. They have that high football IQ. They both play that style of football. So I just think there's a tad bit more upside from a pass rush perspective from JTT than a Jack Sawyer.
And then where would you have Josiah Stewart lumped in with that crew?
Oh, I want to love him. He's just so small, and he's got really short arms.
Yeah.
I love the effort. I love the ferocity with which he plays. He doesn't play his size, which I always love. And as you guys know, watching Mike Singer still last year, guys that just play that way, you want in your room. On day 3, I'm all in. I'm all in. But I do think that the size, the length concerns are real, and he might be more of a designated pass rusher at the next level than being able to play all 3 downs.
Pat Bryant is a guy that got linked to the Commanders today. He goes here in the 4th round to the Giants. Tell us a little bit about him because honestly, until I was sent the information today that they had a visit, I wasn't very familiar with him.
Yeah, so Bryant is, I think he's going to be a very good possession receiver at the next level. He's not the most explosive guy in the world, but I think he does well, again, with the manipulation, trying to create a little bit of space. You see a little bit of rounding off routes at the top, but very trusted guy with the football in the air. Just give him the opportunity. He will go make the play. Really good body control, adjusts to the football well in the air. He's physical after the catch. He's not going to do a ton in terms of, again, making guys miss and just getting into space. More of a galloper, right? He's going to build up that speed. And then if you find one-on-one coverage, again, if you've got some speed guys in the rest of the offense, if he's there giving some one-on-ones, you give him an opportunity. He finds a way to make a play. So I appreciate that from contested catch perspective and the concentration with his body control. And he just kind of finds like unique ways to move his body in the air, which I really do appreciate. But in terms of creating consistent separation or being a yards after catch threat, I think that those are just limited factors for him right now.
That Nick, you hit the receivers there, George, and this Nick Nash is another guy that we've heard a name being bounded around a little bit more than I think we did earlier in the process. What can you tell us about Nick Nash?
I like him as a big slot. Like if that's
Yeah.
like I don't think he's an outside player in the NFL. I like, again, his ball skills. The fact that he's a former quarterback does help a little bit because he sees the field well. And I think that that's another thing that wide receivers that used to play quarterback have naturally, that ability to kind of see what the defense is doing. And that does help him exploit space and get into space as well. So from his own ability, he does a nice job of settling in zone, but he needs space. He needs it. He doesn't do well with contact through the route. I think at the top of the route, he will also do some of the rounding, but you see when he's able to have that space afforded to him, he can get stop spot in those zones and then exploit it after the catch with at least the intention of knowing where he needs to go after. So I see him more as a pure big slot in the NFL, but definitely a red zone weapon because he's got really good ball skills and ball control, body control as well.
Got it. All right, so we're back on the board in round 4, pick 26. I kind of have my thoughts, but I don't want to lead the witness. I'm gonna let you kind of walk it out real quick. I'm gonna throw some ideas at you afterwards. So looking at the board right now, what are your thoughts?
Purely, if I'm looking at, guys, for juice for running back, I'm looking at DJ Giddens. Giddens is probably the best runner on the board right now. I don't think it's that close. Explosive. He can make guys miss in space uniquely. Again, I don't think he's the epitome of what we think about when we see running backs in space. Like he's not the. It's like if you think I hate doing this, but you think about Saquon in space, it just looks so fluid, right? He makes things happen so fluidly. Giddens is more of a little bit of a rigid guy, but he just makes it work, and he creates better angles for himself. Great open field vision, and tough runner as well. But he has that burst, that explosiveness. I think he brings that to the defense as well. But just trying to figure out, again, the Commanders have 2 more picks after this, so we've addressed defensive end and cornerback. I do think running back might have to be at least really deeply considered right here.
That's what I was going to say. I said probably it's a good round for get a running back was my primary thought. So you're thinking DJ Giddens is better than Devin Neal or RJ Harvey?
I think as a complete player, or excuse me, as a pure runner, yes. But Devin Neal is the most complete player here. He can do everything. He can be a true 3 down back. RJ Harvey is more compact, and he's not as bursty as I thought he was going to be with the speed that he has. He's more of a patient guy who almost like a bowling ball at times, where he just kind of finds himself in space, will put his shoulder down and bounce off. He doesn't run with a ton of power. Devin Neal got the best vision of the running backs that are here, and he does a great job of creating arm tackles, bouncing off of guys, finishing the run. He's a very trusted pass protector, and he will catch the football. He's very soft hands out of the backfield. So if you're looking for a guy that's going to do all 3 things very well, he is that type of running back. The thing is that he's not going to give you any juice. I don't know what happened to the 2022, 2023 Devin Neal, the guy who was just running away from guys constantly, felt like he bulked up a bit. I think he was 220 pounds, I think, throughout the season, 213-ish at the combine. So he put on some weight, maybe to have to deal with some of the hits you're going to take in the NFL. But I got no problem, excuse me, with Devin Neal here. But if I had to list it, I think I would say from a pure running perspective, DJ Giddens, especially because it's on day 3 now, where you can pair. I don't know how long Austin Eckler is going to be around at all.
Exactly.
But you already have him for the third down role. So if you're looking for a runner, DJ Giddens makes the most sense to me.
And I think we're looking for a runner because it's Brian Robinson's final year of his contract. I think they want to have someone to kind of work in a committee now that potentially replace Brian Robinson next year. So if you think Giddens is that guy, let's do it.
I do.
And I believe that's who Dane Brugler and company had in their big 7-round mock. I think they had Giddens to the Commanders in the most recent one.
Look at that.
Yeah, I think so too.
That's fun. That's a fun pick too.
We did this. We did one of these on Monday with Devin Jackson, and he covers the Eagles. So we did both the Eagles and the Commanders. And it's crazy as he's picking, like, what do you have? What do they have? 12 selections, 11 selections this year?
It goes out of control.
Down to 5, and it was just like we sat there forever just waiting for him to make picks. Could be a lot of fun for Howie on Thursday.
I don't want to think about it, man. I don't want to think about it. I'm not even in the NFC East. Like, I don't even care about that.
That's so funny.
It is.
Oh man.
Hey, so we actually got a question from the chat. Let me pull it up for you, Dan, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
He was asking about TreVeyon Henderson. What are your thoughts on him? Do you think he's a complete player? Do you think he's a first round, second round selection? What are your thoughts on him?
I love the idea of TreVeyon Henderson.
Okay.
If TreVeyon didn't have the injuries, I think I'd be far more comfortable taking him like in the top of the second or bottom of the first. But the injury history is real. I do think it's also changed a little bit of the way he runs. He doesn't run with a ton of power, specifically between the tackles. He's a very good change of pace back. He does a great job outside the tackles. He makes guys miss in space. I wanted him to do a little bit more of that after the catch, like making guys miss. I thought he went down a little bit too much on first contact. Decent contact balance. He will fall forward. I think he has fine vision. But overall, I think that what we see from him is that he's going to be best in a committee. Again, I want to hope that I'm wrong about that, because if he doesn't get hurt the rest of his career, he's going to be an incredibly valuable player. It's hard to project that right now for me specifically. So you want to bet on the talent. I totally get it. I understand that for sure. But the injury history is very concerning for me.
What's the chance that Judkins actually has the better NFL career?
I think there's a decent shot of that. I think people are looking too far at what Ohio State did, and they made him a hammer. That's what he was asked to do. He was asked to be the hammer. And when you go back to the Ole Miss tape, he's a much better athlete than anyone gives him credit for. He makes guys miss very well. He runs with that same type of power. I also think he was a bit lighter at Ole Miss. And when he came to Ohio State, he bulked up a little bit more. Like, he was 220 at the combine and he ran as fast as he did. Like, I think that's closer to what you're seeing from a Judkins at the next level. Again, if he's going to play maybe a little bit lighter than he did at the combine, I think he's got just as good of a chance to have a better career than Quinshon, than TreVeyon. But again, if TreVeyon stays healthy, I think both these guys are going to be studs.
All right, back of the clock, round 6, pick 29. We walked away with Jahdae Barron, JT, and DJ Giddens. A pretty well-rounded, pretty balanced draft haul so far. Back on the board, team needs remaining wide receiver, potentially safety, edge, or we can go kicker. You never know about that. So let's take a look and let's see what your thoughts on the big board we're looking at.
All right. So I know wide receivers probably still, again, a need for the Commanders. Probably safety, maybe linebacker a little bit.
We can look around if you want. We can get a wide receiver.
Yeah, let's go. Oh man, Ja'Cory Brooks. I like Ja'Cory. Ja'Cory is fun, but he's got some drop concerns, and I do think if you're looking for a body type on the outside, he's a little light. Obviously 6'2", 184 pounds, as you see there. So he's a little bit lighter. I love his ball skills. I really appreciate his, again, a route running type of play. He can do a lot of different things, but the drops are a real concern for me. But again, I think he can develop a little bit more for that. But if he doesn't, you're having to deal with a guy who just has drops like littered throughout a game, which is always frustrating.
If the concern for wide receivers' hands, I'm not necessarily too high on that right now.
Yeah,
that's a little intimidating for sure.
Catch the football. It's the one thing you gotta do, my guy. So yeah, I love the talent, but the drops are very, very concerning. If maybe like if we're looking at a big receiver, like looking at that board, I think Trayshawn Holden out of Oregon is very intriguing. I actually did his scouting report, and he's a little bit of an underrated player after the catch. I don't think he's going to light the world on fire, but he does a nice job of getting into space and identifying that space. One thing that I will say about Oregon and Tennessee, because this is the same for both players, they don't develop their wide receivers. They really don't. And one thing that you notice about Holden is that there's a lot of physical talent, but the offense is based like on timing. Obviously, the quarterback gets the ball out. Bo Nix last year, and Dylan Gabriel this past season. So it's based on timing. There's not a ton after the play. Like you don't see a lot of wide receivers just innately know how to get into space post route and be able to do what they need to do at the next level in terms of finding that space. Quarterbacks get out of the pocket all the time. And, I don't know, Jaden Daniels is going to get out of the pocket. He's going to get out of the pocket. He can do that, and you want to be able to find that space. And Holden is he's a physical receiver who can play purely on the outside or a little bit in the slot if you want him to. And I think that his hands are very good. He plays with good timing. Again, I think that that's also something we're going to see from the Commanders offense is based on timing. In the NFL, you have to have very good timing. So he's a fun option here, and just having that big body guy with some deep field, maybe more build-up speed again there, but I do like him as an option as well.
What about
safeties or
what about Arian? Tell us a little bit about Arian Smith and Jimmy Horn Jr.
Arian Smith would be maybe one of the best receivers in this draft class if he could catch the football.
I know.
I was watching him, and I actually think I did his report too. I was watching him like, man, he just makes a crazy catch here, and then he drops that one. He drops that one. And it's still, again, one of those things, like he might be legitimately one of the best receivers in this class if he could catch. But you see that the field speed, you see the ability to just kind of get up and go. He adds juice immediately to whatever receiver room he walks into. You're just going to have to hope that he can, work on a jugs machine in 24 hours a day, just constantly during the off season. But it's again, I really like the talent, but the same with Georgia. There's no development there.
No,
there's nothing there.
It was frustrating watching him drop big passes.
Yeah. He did the same thing at the Senior Bowl too. And then Jimmy Horn, I'm a big fan of Jimmy Horn.
I didn't realize he was that short.
Yeah, he's small.
He's real small.
Yeah.
So he's a pure slot guy, and he's going to give you some return juice as well. But quick twitch, plays with good timing. I think for his size, he has pretty good hands through contact, which was, again, surprising. He's got really small hands, but I think he will showcase that. He tracks the ball well to all levels of the field. Obviously, he's going to come in as a real deep threat, but he can do wide receiver screens, yards after catch, and things like that. He's going to make guys miss in space too. Like he's going to be able to do that. So it's a niche role, but on day 3, we're talking about guys that are going to be either just pure outside or pure slot guys. And with his return ability as well put into there, I think there is definitely something to be said about Jimmy Horn Jr. here.
All right, back on the board. So we looked at wide receivers. I don't know if you want to look at any other position by any chance.
Safety. Yeah, let's take a look at safety. Yeah, let's take a look.
Okay.
See the names.
Malik Verdon, Keandre Jackson, Dan Jackson, Roywan Lane, Shamari Simmons, Jordan Clark, Craig Woodson.
Still amazing to me that Dan Jackson didn't get an invite to the combine. He's going to make a defensive coordinator happy.
Just going to be that do-it-all guy. He's going to do whatever is asked of him. Verdon's an interesting one. I actually think I have a report on him. Let me just pull it up real quick.
All right.
I do.
This is your report, by the way.
Yeah,
I really like the way this draft network.
Yeah, it's slick. It's real slick.
It's very nice.
Yeah, it's I will. I mean, not to toot their own horn or anything, but it's so nice to have that right there, like just the entire report of everything you can see. At least it's one person's opinion, but again, these are, at least in my opinion, I feel like my reports are very detailed. So, size-wise, if that's, I don't know specifically what safety role you guys are looking for in Washington.
By furry, honestly.
Yeah, that's not really going to be Verdon for you.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
going to be a big physical guy. Box, come down into the box, a little bit of the big nickel as well. But I like, again, I like what he's going to be able to do with that versatility. So if that was on the board for them, that would make sense.
Well, they do like versatility. I mean, you think they lost Jeremy Chin, so I mean that's kind of the role that they,
Yeah.
he wasn't necessarily a free safety, just a guy with position flex that they sit there next to Quan Martin.
Yeah, I think that
Who-
again, with that ability to do a little bit of everything for a defense, that Verdon plays a little bit of that role, and he can probably offer you a little bit of a dime back or two with his size, 6'4", 220 pounds. Like, he offers some of that as well, which is always a useful thing to be able to play in dime and have him come down as a safety, but play a little bit of backer there, which again, he's going to take good angles in pursuit. He's going to be physical. So if they do run the football, he can bring that to you as well.
And he helps on special teams as well, I assume.
Yeah, I would imagine so. Like,
Yeah.
it seems to be a lot of these day 3 safety guys are going to have to be able to come in and
Yep.
give you something on special teams.
Absolutely.
Well, the pick is yours, sir.
All right. All right. I'm going to take Trayshawn Holden personally. I think body type, he makes a lot of sense for Washington in this specific role. There's upside there as well, but he's going to be a pretty good blocker on the outside. And you don't have to take him off the field, but in 3 receiver sets, him, Terry McLaurin, Deebo Samuel with Noah Brown, Luke McCaffrey. I think that's a good room.
Nice.
Where were you on Luke McCaffrey last year?
I was not a Luke McCaffrey fan.
Okay.
Again, I watched him at the Senior Bowl. I just didn't see a lot of high level upside for him. I thought he was a pure slot with some decent yards after catch stuff, but I would have taken him probably in the 5th round, not the 3rd round or the 4th round.
AP got a lot of credit for the draft last year. There's a couple of guys he took a little higher than I think people expected. McCaffrey was one. I think Ben Sinnott got his way into the 2nd round. That might have been just a little bit high for him. Interesting to see what they end up doing with Sinnott this year, because again, he's going to be buried on the depth chart. Yeah, unless Ertz gets hurt, there's not a lot of way for him to get snaps this year again.
It's tough. It's tough to see because I mean, I like Ben, but I feel like he's in this almost H-back role, like where he might be best for him. So it's tough to draft an H-back in the 2nd round and say, tell everyone, hey, we want this guy. and it's fine to want the player. Like, I get it. He's a hard worker. He's a tough-nosed kid. He's a pretty good athlete. He's gonna find ways to make some tough plays, but he also dropped the football quite a bit throughout his career and then at the Senior Bowl too. So I understand wanting that type of player in your room for a culture perspective. And I thought maybe that played a little bit too much into the pick.
Gotcha.
Makes sense.
Yep.
All right. Back on the board. Last pick of the drafts, round 7, pick 29. We addressed most of our needs. You did a pretty good job, but now we can kind of pick wherever you want.
All right. This is, again, there's only 5 picks. It's hard to really, I guess, leave a draft saying you've accomplished a lot, but I think that they've done a decent job of at least getting some players that they need. Smail Mondon is kind of screaming at me right now. I think this is he's one of the more underrated coverage backers in this class, and I don't know why he's consistently available in the 7th round. In all of these mocks, it makes no sense to me, and that's also probably my report on Mondon. But I think I don't know exactly what. Again, you got Bobby Wagner, you've got Frankie Louvu. It feels to me like he would complete the trio of linebackers. How do you guys feel about that?
Small money is exactly what the league is looking for right now. I'm with you on the idea that he's just gotten lost in the draft this year, but I'm not sure why. And this actually, George, doesn't have anything to do with my Georgia bias. It just is like he's an easy movie that floats around the field. He's like everything you want in the modern linebacker. So I'm not really sure what. Yeah, I'm with you. I know why he's always available in all the different mock machines that we use towards the middle to end of the draft. So I'm with you.
So Daniel, educate me. I'm not necessarily a Georgia fan like Doug is over there. So Bobby Wagner's more of a field general, more of a run stopper and linebacker. Frankie Lee was more of our versatile chess piece who puts him off the edge a little bit, more of our the high motor guy. We're looking for a coverage linebacker. Is that what Molden would be, in your opinion?
That's exactly what he is. He comes in.
Okay.
I think he could probably be able to start in this defense as a will linebacker. Like
Okay.
that's what he brings. I think he moves extremely well in space. He's got an underrated football IQ. He has a really good sense of just the field in general. He moves well with it. I mean, you're not going to get a ton as a pass rusher. I don't really think you need to do that with him. Just put him in space as a weak side linebacker. He will pursue well, and then ideally you want him on the field on those third downs because he can close to the football quickly. He can carry running backs out of the backfield. I think that he's a really versatile coverage player. With his size, you might even be able to do something crazy and put him at safety every now and then and just kind of see what he does because he does have that movement skills.
16 to 24. Okay, small.
Yeah, so he's not the biggest guy in the world, but again, you can get creative with those kind of players. So I really like him in this situation, honestly.
And at least a 2, if not a 3-year starter at Georgia. So I mean, there's something just to be said for that.
For that, for sure. Yep. And then on top of that, a 7th round pick, you're looking for special team guys. You can definitely be on the coverage unit for some teams.
Absolutely.
So, perfect. Yeah, I love it. So it's fantastic. Let's do it. I like that pick, actually.
Talk myself into this draft. I feel a lot better about it with that.
It's actually pretty cool. It's a difference.
It's totally different than any other one that we've done so far, but in a good way.
Yeah,
a lot of names that we haven't. Of course, it's whoever you take first, right? Like basically dictates the rest of the draft in some way.
I do feel like defensive end first may have. Probably, again, hindsight is 2020, right? It might have been the way to go, but I'm not mad getting Jahdae Barrett in this defense. It's the same kind of player that I think that fits really well with what Dan Quinn wants to do.
No, and you're right. We've done enough of these, George, to know that if you don't go DN at 29,
absolutely,
you're particularly if the second round goes how it did today in this mock draft, where they just get smashed in the first, in the next 10 picks after 29.
Yeah,
then you're really scrambling to try to get that. If in fact they feel that that's a need that they need to fix, which I think that they do.
100%.
Yeah,
I agree with that 100%. As Doug kind of alluded to, it's so nice having different perspectives on from different parts of the country, just kind of giving some insight on the draft. Like this is a really cool, interesting, well-rounded draft. I think I'd be happy with it as well. But yeah, as Doug kind of also touched on, we've done so many of these. For me, it's like if we don't do an edge in the first round, we're chasing after the entire draft. That's what I found so far. So
that's fair. And again, you might have reached we might have reached a little bit with JTT. Like he's probably more of a 3rd round pick. But at the end of the day, if you're looking for a guy who's going to be a pure run defender, like a really good run defender, high football IQ guy, I think he makes sense. Again, that's why we take him over Jack Sawyer with just a little bit more upside as a pass rusher. But again, just seeing that second round getting hammered with defensive ends, that hurt my heart a little bit.
It was brutal, but there were a couple of corners that made it that far. If we'd have gone a different direction, I know you mentioned Morrison before we get out of here. I'm curious your thoughts on him. If it wasn't the hip, I don't think people would be quite as concerned about the injury. Hips are important for movement skills. Does it bother you? Because I mean, without it, he's a top 15 player, right? I mean, he was like projecting the top 15 last year. So concerns or no concerns? It feels like the Rebel injury is less, impactful as Morrison's, but maybe that's not right.
I think Morrison's a better player than Revel. I think he's more versatile. But again, he's going to work out, I think, at the end of this week or early next week. That's where, again, if we see anything on the field, if someone ever gets any clips of him doing anything, because he's going to do on-field work, if he's not looking like he did, I'll have some concerns, absolutely. But we don't know until we know. That's one of the hardest things about injury projection is that, Siobhan might end up being fine. He also might never get that explosiveness back to be able to close on receivers over the middle of the field because ACLs are tricky. And he's not going to be 100% this year. In 2026 is when he's going to be at his best. We've seen that time after time after time with injuries like that. So, I mean, Morrison, again, if it goes this way in the draft where, okay, you probably should take defensive end first. Morrison, I would actually probably have Trey Amos over both of them at this point because he's healthy. And again, he's got real man coverage ability. He's physical. He's got good ball skills. I think that's the kind of player you also want in this type of defense. If he's going to be left on an island from time to time, I think he's really well suited to do that. So I'd probably have Trey Amos listed there, and then Benjamin Morrison, and then Siobhan Revel. I think he's a cover 3 type of corner, and which again, who knows, ending up with the injury stuff. But I probably defensive end first. But again, who knows what happens.
Yeah, this was fantastic, man.
Yeah, blast, dude.
One of the more underrated guys in the space. I wish you all the
Thank you.
best, and hope that your star continues to grow because you deserve it. Your work is fantastic.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I had a lot of fun doing this again, being the GM and having to pick forever. All the picks just is a different atmosphere because it's always fun to do that with different teams and getting more, understanding, asking you guys questions about the different fits and different styles and stuff like that. Learning on the job like that is always a lot of fun. So I appreciate you guys having me very much.
It's fantastic. We'll do this again sometime soon.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you, bud.
Peace out.